Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Tariq Amin, lecturer, Department of English, Kohat University of Science and Technology, Kohat. Our today's topic is purposes of reading. This is lecture number 16 of the course Communication Skills. The course code is ENG134. Lecture outlines include purposes of reading. There are different purposes of reading, but we are going to discuss just 6 purposes of reading. The very first one is reading to search for simple information, reading to skim quickly, reading to learn from texts, reading to integrate information, reading to write and critique texts, and the last one is reading for general comprehension. Learning objectives are the students will be able to know about different purposes of reading. Purposes of reading. As discussed, there are different purposes of reading, but we are going to discuss just 6 purposes. The 6 purposes are reading to search for simple information, reading to skim quickly, reading to learn from texts, reading to integrate information, reading to write and critique texts, and reading for general comprehension. We are going to discuss the very first purpose of reading, that is reading to search for simple information. Sometimes we read text for locating specific information in a text, or sometimes we read different texts for locating simple information in the text. This is the same idea that we had discussed in the previous classes. We had discussed 2 types of reading, or 2 methods of reading. The first one was scanning, the second one was skimming. This reading purpose is very much related to scanning, where we had discussed that scanning is a speed reading technique where we read different texts for the purpose of locating specific information in it. We had discussed that your specific information can be in the form of words, your specific information can be in the form of numbers, it can be in the form of figures, it can be in the form of proper nouns, common nouns, it can be in the form of even pictures as well, it can be in the form of tables, it can be in the form of different graphs. And when we try to look at specific information in a text, we apply the strategy of scanning a text. When our purpose is to look at specific information in a text or simple information in a text, we apply the strategy of scanning. So sometimes we read to search for simple information. This could be one of our purposes behind reading a text. Now, we typically scan the text. I've discussed the same point that when we read for simple information, we scan the text for specific information or a specific word. So our specific information can be in the form of word, it can be in the form of number, it can be in the form of figures, it can be in the form of pictures as well, or it could be just a specific word. For example, I give you a text of 10 paragraphs, 5 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs, and I asked you to search a specific word. For example, tree is a word, and I ask you to search this word or locate this word in the text. You apply the strategy of scanning. Now your purpose behind reading those 10 paragraphs or 5 paragraphs is to search for simple information. Your purpose is not to understand the whole text. Your purpose is not to integrate the whole information. Your purpose is not to know or not to understand the whole text, but your purpose is to locate or to search. Your purpose is to search just simple word or just simple information, just specific information. So this is one of your purposes. As an example, we usually search through a telephone directory to find key information, either an address or a phone number. This is one of the examples of scanning, that when we search for a specific contact. For example, your friend there whose name is Zahid, and you go to your telephone directory, you skip all other contact numbers, all contact name, you just go to Z, and in the Z category you search for a Zahid. This is your key information. Zahid is key information and you search for it. The other purpose is, the second purpose is reading to skim quickly. We had discussed the same in our previous classes as well, where we had discussed skimming. Skimming was one of the strategy that we had discussed in the class, that skimming is also a speed reading technique where we read a text in order to get the overall idea of the text. Now, reading to skim quickly is a common part of many reading tasks. This is common part of many reading tasks. For example, if you are reading a text for academic purposes, first of all, you try to skim it. You try to skim it in order to guess what is there in the text, in order to guess what the overall text is about, or in order to guess the central idea of the text, in order to have general understanding of the text. You skim a text. So this could be one of the purposes of reading a text. We usually apply, all of us usually apply this strategy when we start reading a text. First of all, we just go through it, we skim it in order to get what is there in the text, in order to have general understanding of the text. And this skimming helps us very much when we practically start reading a text, to practically start reading a chapter. A combination of strategies to find the location of the information. Yes, we apply this strategy. This is the combination of strategy and helps us locate information. I had given the example of cust, that for example, you are having an essay about cust and someone asks you to search how many teachers are there in cust. Now, first of all, you need to skim this text in order to locate where my information could be, in the text. So first of all, you apply the strategy of skimming in order to locate where my intended information, my target information can be found, or what could be the location of my information. I told you that, for example, there are 5 paragraphs in the essay about cust. The first one is about teacher, the first one is about student, the second one is about academics, the third one is about beauty of cust, the fourth one is about the teachers of Kohat University of Science and Technology. Now you apply the strategy of skimming in order to locate where my information could be. After applying this strategy, you come to know that my information could be in the 4th paragraph, that is about teachers of Kohat University of Science and Technology. So this is the combination of these different strategies to look at the information. First of all, you look at your information, and after that you use your different reading comprehension skills. We all have some reading comprehension skills, and we apply those reading comprehension skill to obtain a general idea about the text. We obtain general idea about the text after applying our reading comprehension skills. The third purpose of reading is reading to learn from texts. We read different texts for learning purposes. It most of the time occurs in academic context. It most of the time occurs in professional context to learn a considerable amount of information from a text. As discussed, it occurs in academic context. For example, we are students. When we read different texts, for example, we read novels, we read different chapters, we read different dramas, we read different chapters, we read different books. We try our level best to learn more and more from these texts. For example, if we are reading a novel, we try our level best to learn more and more from it. And if we are reading a text, we are reading a chapter, we try our best to learn more and more from the text. So our purpose is to learn more and more from the text. Our purpose is not to look at specific information. Our purpose is not to have general understanding of the text. Our purpose is to learn more and more from it. We try to remember main ideas and details of the main and supporting ideas in the text. We always have some main ideas in a text, and we always have some supporting ideas that support the main ideas in the text. And we have some support main details about the topic, and we have some supporting details about the topic. We read both. We try to remember the main ideas as well as the supporting ideas that support the main ideas. We try to remember both. It makes stronger inferencing demands to connect the text information with background knowledge. When we read text, sometimes we already have some background knowledge about the topic. For example, you are reading an essay about Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, or you are reading an essay about Allama Muhammad Iqbal. You are reading something about Kohat University of Science and Technology. Let's say Kohat University of Science and Technology, Kohat. Now we all have some background knowledge about Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Allama Muhammad Iqbal, and Kohat University of Science and Technology, Kohat. When we read something about Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah or Allama Muhammad Iqbal or about Kohat University of Science and Technology, we already have some background knowledge about it. We connect the information or the text information with our background knowledge. When we start reading a text, for example, about Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and we come across different new ideas, we try to connect the new ideas with our background knowledge that we already have about Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. So when you read to learn something from the text, your purpose is to learn more and more from the text, or your purpose is to learn from something from the text. It requires or it makes stronger inferencing demands. Carried out at a slower reading rate, as discussed earlier, that when we read something for learning purposes, we read it in detail, and it is carried out at a slower reading rate. The fourth reading purpose is reading to integrate information. Now you have read a text. Now you try to integrate that information. You have come across different information and you have learned lots of material from it. You have learned a lot from it. You try to integrate the same information. For example, it requires critical evaluation of the information. Now the information can be complementary, it can be mutually supporting, or it can be conflicting information. So we come across different information. First of all, we critically evaluate the information. We evaluate the complementary information. We critically evaluate the mutually supporting information. And we also critically evaluate conflicting information. Why do we do this? We critically evaluate the different types of information in order to decide. We try to decide after critical evaluation of the information, what information to integrate. We decide what sort of information could be integrated or what sort of information should be integrated, and how to integrate it for your goal. How to integrate it. You decide what to integrate and you decide how the information could be integrated. So you make these decision what information should be integrated and how the information should be integrated after the critical evaluation of the information. The fifth purpose of reading is reading to write and critique text. Sometimes we read different texts in order to write something about it or in order to critique different texts. So this could also be one of our purposes behind reading. Reading to write and reading to critique texts may be reading to write. This is first. Reading to critique is another purpose. Reading to write or reading to critique text may be task variants of reading to integrate information. So it could be task variants of reading to integrate information. These two reading purposes could be the task variants of the previous purpose that we discussed in the previous slide, that was reading to integrate information. These two reading purposes could be task variants of the previous purpose, that is reading to integrate information. Both requires abilities to select and critique information from text. First of all, it requires the ability to select. You should be able to select specific information from the text, and after that you should be able to critique information from the text. You should be able to first of all select and then critique information from the text. And both purposes represent common academic tasks. These are common academic tasks. Both the purposes represent common academic tasks that call upon reading abilities needed to integrate information. When you try to integrate information, you should be able to select information and you should be able to critique information. The sixth and last purpose of reading is reading for general comprehension. Sometimes we read text for our general comprehension, for our general understanding. For example, it requires very rapid and automatic processing of words. It requires very rapid and automatic processing of words. When we read for general comprehension, we process the words automatically and we process the words very rapidly. For example, you read a text that is about a particular topic. Now your purpose is not to read the text for your academic purposes, for examination purposes, but you read a text for your general understanding. For example, I'm a student and my area is linguistics, but I read a topic or I select a topic for my general understanding from biology, for example, or from physics or from maths. Now, my purpose of reading the text is not to prepare myself for my examination, or it is not my purpose of reading the particular topic is not to look at specific information at it, but my purpose is to have general understanding of the text, or to have general understanding of the text, to generally comprehend the text. So this could be one of our purposes. We read lots of text for our general understanding, for general comprehension purposes. Yes, we automatically process different words and we process them very rapidly. And it requires strong skills in forming a general meaning representation of the main ideas. You should be very skilled in forming a general representation of main ideas. You should be skilled to form the general meaning representation of the ideas. Efficient coordination of many processes. It requires efficient coordination of many processes. Many processes are involved in a type of text reading where your purpose is to generally comprehend it or generally understand a text. So it requires lots of processes are involved in this process when you read a text for your general understanding. Thank you very much for listening to the lecture. In today's class, we discussed different purposes of reading. There are different purposes of reading. One of the purposes could be reading for enjoyment purposes as well. We didn't discuss this process, that reading for enjoyment purposes. I told you in the beginning of the class that there could be different purposes behind reading a text, but we are going to discuss just a few. We have discussed just 6 purposes of reading. Now you can read different texts for your enjoyment purposes as well, for pleasure purposes as well. For example, We read novels, we read dramas, we read dramas, novels, poetry for enjoyment purposes. For enjoyment purpose. Same is the case with another purpose as well. Sometimes we read different texts for time pass as well. Sometimes we pass our time with the help of reading. We read different texts. For example, we read newspaper for time pass. So this could be also one of the purposes of reading behind text. So we discussed some of the purposes of reading a text in today's class, that there are different purposes of reading. Whenever we do something, there are always some purpose behind it. Same is the case with reading. Reading is a highly complex mental activity. So there are always some purposes behind reading different texts. When we read a text, there is always some purpose behind a text. So thank you for listening to the lecture. These are the references. Thank you. Allah Hafiz. See you in the next class.